Hello, Afeez. So good to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on should I say show?
Yeah, it's a show.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I am going to read your bio. So, Afeez Awowole, our guest for today, is a seasoned finance leader, is currently the Director of Technical Accounting and Digital Assets at Ava Labs, advancing governance and reporting for the Avalanche blockchain ecosystem. Previously, he served as head of finance at Enclave Markets, the world's first fully encrypted trading platform, and has held senior roles at Meta, EY, and KPMG, as well as a consultant at AIB, Ireland's biggest banking group by market capitalization. Afeez specializes in the intersection of accounting, Web3, AI, and policy, advocating for digital asset standards and AI-driven finance infrastructure. He holds a BSc in Zoology from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria, an MBA from the University of South Wales, and is a member of ICANN, ICAEW, AICPA, and SEMA. Thank you again, Afeez, for coming on the show. And I'm really excited to talk to you today because your career path is very interesting. I hear Web3 up and down all over the place. And I don't think I really understood what it meant until I went for my executive MBA. That's when I knew, oh, all these things is blockchain, cryptocurrency, and all. So prepare to tell us a lot about that.
All right.
So my first question is, I would like my viewers to meet you, right?
Yeah.
I've read your bio, obviously, but take us more in depth into your career journey. How did you start? And how did you just walk us through your career journey? How did you start? And what were some
Yeah.
of the critical steps that got you to where you are today?
Again, thanks for having me on the show to share my career journey, experience, and all that. I I think my career in accounting was by happenstance. Like you read in my bio there, I studied zoology. And so I never in my wildest dreams thought I was gonna end up in an accountant. I studied zoology. Next steps for me was to go for a master's in some form of ecological advanced studies because I'm very particular. I'm very green at heart. No, but I then thought, well, maybe I should work for a couple of years before I advance to that. Anyway, I started out in banking. I pivoted to professional services, and then I moved into core industry. But one thing is, my career has been it's not been one that has been stuck to a lane, sort of. I've been right from the very start, right from the very beginning of things, I've just been focused on impact, value creation, and of course, value creation to my employer, the people I work with, and to myself as well. And as well as just, getting the impact and positive out there, the people I work with and all that. So generally, like I said, I started out in banking, and I think that provided I started with Sky, and then I moved to Zenith Bank, and that provided the platform for me for understanding of financial systems and controls. And from then, I pivoted to professional services. This was with KPMG, and KPMG for like about 10 years, KPMG Nigeria and KPMG in Ireland, and then to EY. And then from EY, and I think the professional services time of my career provide me with really rigorous grounding for the technical aspects of my understanding of accounting. We both started out from the same background, KPMG,
Yeah.
ecology. So you would very much relate to what I'm saying. No, it exposed me. I was just coming science background, I focus on zoology and genetics. No, but when I got into KPMG lead, I started more as an auditor rather than an accountant, but you have to be both anyway. And I started seeing how things could shape quite fast. Those were
Mm,
quite fast-moving environments. And I think my science inclination played a huge role in how fast I also adapted to the learning
mm,
environment there. A lot of times I'm trying to figure out accounting or audit, it just seemed to me like I was studying physics or chemistry all over again. No, so yeah, professional facility services provided me that background for just being able to not crack under pressure, open to
Mm.
let ask relevant questions, the better questions, and just focus on working together in a collaborative manner. And I did that for quite a long time, and then at the later stage in my career, decided to pivot into the industry, and this is when I then got into Meta. And the old banking and professional services, I believe all of those provided the baseline or the foundation for everything that followed on from there on. So I think that's huge experience from the professional services environment into Meta, which is ideally we call the industry. And I think it was when I actually got into Meta, then I stopped being that textbook guy, that guy that always what does the standard say? What are carry all these big books, IFRS, Insight, and all of those things. So I stopped being that textbook guy, and this is where I started wearing the art of commercial discipline. I then realized, and this is you have to learn this. Okay, I don't
Mm.
think it is something you can actually sit down and learn. You have to learn it from working with people. I realized that the answer to every complex thing you're facing is not necessarily by the books. It could just be a simple question, as something as simple as what exactly are you trying to achieve here?
Mhm. Mm.
Yeah, what is the business intent? What is the commercial objective of this you're trying to achieve here? And when you ask the right questions, you probe the right people, you find the right answers. And by just sometimes just changing a word or a clause in an agreement or changing the commercial structure of something, you're able to achieve more commercially favorable outcomes for the
Yeah.
business, stakeholders, and all that, rather than every time just going back to the literature. So that really grounded me for a lot. And of course, this was also where I pivoted into ESG. I dabbled into digital assets primarily, a lot of innovation. This was also when Meta was really cracking on with the reality labs, the whole idea of the metaverse. So I was constantly working in the midst of ambiguity. So always had to figure things out on my own or with my manager, with my team. And that really set me on the right path to be able to do what I'm currently doing today, which is core Web3, digital asset, digital finance, because we operate now in a space where we have some clarity now, but if you
Mm.
contrast it to like 5, 6 years when I got into Web3, there was little to no guidance.
I can
So
imagine.
in those early days, it was always just you pick this, you pick that to try to figure out what is the most reasonable approach. And we work with that as long as it's within the confines of the standards and you think it is right and acceptable, of course, you bounce things off your stakeholders internally and externally. In the line of my work, it is very important to have external advisors, typically from Big Four, the top 10 firms, because you would make a lot of judgment call and you don't want the judgment calls that you're going to make to be the ones that is going to come back to haunt you later on. So, this has been, I think my career is maybe a story of intentionality, agility, adaptability, trust, transformation, knowing when to blend innovation with precision, and generally things like that. And I'm always open to new challenge. It has to scare me. I have to be as scared as excited as I am when I'm trying to get myself into something new. So that's the long and short of my career so far, I believe.
I really love what you said about intentionality. And if I was to add anything, I think also being open to trying new things.
Yeah.
Because like you said, Web3 is even still ambiguous, right? And I mean, I followed your journey on LinkedIn and I know that you have been you've had a seat at the table, shaping policy, shaping standards, shaping accounting for Web3. So you've been very open, and I really like that. As I was saying, I said your journey has been shaped by, apart from intentionality, you've
Mhm.
also allowed yourself to try new things.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I see, and probably one of the reasons why I started this Careers in Accounting series, was to open up the minds of accountants and show them what's possible, that
Yeah.
you don't have to start and end your career in a traditional path. The traditional path of you either work in a bank or you work in an accounting firm, you rise to partner and you
Yeah.
retire. You can be many things. We have
Yeah.
lots of transferable skills as accountants, and your story is a testament to that. I followed your journey on LinkedIn and I've seen how you've literally been part of the people that shaped accounting for Web3. Because, like you said, when you came into this career path, it was very vague. There was little or nothing. It was just you thinking through problem solving and coming up with solutions from what's available and from your
Yeah.
own judgment calls. So, why Web3? I know you kind of stumbled into it, but
Yeah.
there are many people that would have stumbled into it and it would have just been like, this is definitely not my thing. So, take us into your mind. What made you like, what got you interested and what has kept you in this career path? Because you started in the bank, it's a known
Yeah.
career path. Everything is straightforward. There
Hmm.
are processes, there are policies in place. You just have to follow the rule book. You got into KPMG. I remember that when I was leaving KPMG, you were in technical desk,
Yeah.
which was probably how you got into technical accounting. You went to Ireland, you got into technical accounting still, and you went to Meta, and you said you did ESG and all of those
Mm.
um, alternative accounting stuff.
Yeah.
So, how did you get into Web3, and what
Right.
has kept you here?
Big question with a lot behind it. There's a huge misconception generally amongst accounting and finance professionals, and maybe even professionals general, that accounting careers are narrow and linear. Okay. Yeah, and that is not correct. Okay. I think accounting is one of the most expansive careers you can have. And because, excuse me, you find yourself, and this is me speaking from my experience and the people I've mentored, the people I've led in workplace and all that. I try to let people know you can either choose to narrow yourself, box yourself in one path, or stretch your tentacles. Okay. And I believe I've been able to spread my tentacles as much as I've loved to. Sometimes I even feel like I'm stretching too much, because on my typical day is such that in the morning I'm probably talking to tax, in midday I'm talking to product, afternoon or evening time I'm talking to legal. When I should be in bed, sometimes I'm probably driving executive decisions and all that. So when I'll be like, okay, when can this calm down? So back to the question, really. It is always me just being open. And you talked about technical desk, which really helped me become quite grounded in the nature. It's really provided me with significant relevant experience for everything I've done in the last 10 to 13 years. I think I moved
Wow.
to technical desk 14 years ago, or thereabout,
Mm.
and I was there for 3 years, and then I transitioned to Ireland. No, and that background, of course, everything counts. We had the sum of our experiences, the banking experience, the audit experience,
Yeah.
the experience, everything continues to be relevant to me. But I think my curiosity also played a huge part in it. And I think that's one of the things that actually led me to technical desk. You probably remember, you have to be a chartered accountant to be part of that team. And I was the first person to go to that team without being a chartered accountant.
Mm.
It was meant to be initially just a 3 month rotation, and then it turned out to be 3 years until I left KPMG Nigeria. So there is always a part of me that is curious, that always wants answers, that always wants to solve problems. I'm never afraid to roll up my sleeves, go knee deep and just work things out. And I think that has really played a role in how I've been able to navigate complexity and ambiguity this past few years. So, when I joined Meta pretty much after EY. Now, while I was at EY too, I didn't just stick to one team. I'm probably one of
Mm.
those very few people in EY that could say I had experience in FRLG, the financial reporting group. I had experience in the professional practice group, and I had experience working in FAS, Financial Accounting Advisory Services, and probably and the CFO advisory. Probably one of a few people you would ever see really that have that collective experience. So I've always wanted to get to know as much as I can without, of course, burning my own candles. So when I got into Meta, this was when Meta was just trying to pivot from, I think I see myself using the word pivot a lot, but it's quite relevant. This was when they're trying to move away from focus on ads revenue. Ads revenue, at that point was even like 99% of their top line revenue. So trying to diversify into other things, software, hardware sales, and then they were launching this stablecoin project and payment, Novi Libra, as the Web3 OGs would know it. And my managers then, I was just the second person on the table, like, oh, how are we going to do this? You and you, these are the things we need to do, these are the things we need to work on. The me, okay, that curious guy that always wants to try new stuff, navigates complexity, try out things that are ambiguous. I'm gonna deal with those things that are new, these things you call new business. Let me go figure them out. I honestly didn't even know what I was getting into, but a part of it turned out to be Web3. And I championed that for all of the entities then that Meta set up across EMEA, APAC, and LATAM, and talking more than a dozen entities. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, even in Nigeria, South Africa, Brazil, Puerto Rico, everywhere. As long as it was about the Novi Liver project and it was not in the US, I was leading the charge of it. And what this meant was I was constantly sitting and talking product engineers, the task guys, the people that understand payments. And these I also say that every experience counts. So I was able to kind of repurpose my experience in banking from maybe 10 years prior, and also the experience I had in AIB, maybe from like a year or two prior, to some of these things. And of course,
Mhm.
sitting with the standards, talking to people, trying to understand where we're going. And I enjoyed it. I just naturally enjoyed the whole thing. And this is the part for me to when it was time to move on, when Ava Labs came calling. And again, Ava Labs is, we could say Meta was like Web3, but it's also big tech. Ava Labs is core Web3. Yeah, it's a blockchain development company, and we focus support the Avalanche ecosystem. I mean, so when Ava Labs came calling, I'm like, yeah, this is the next calling. I was not afraid. Like I said, it has to excite me and equally scare me. And I was not afraid to now be going, deep into Web3 proper. For me, it was all about there's knowledge, there's experience, there are things we can repurpose. And of course, when we get there, we figure the rest out. Okay. Sometimes I just adopt the kick the can down the road approach, knowing that when I get to that point, I will
We'll
figure it
figure it
out.
out.
Yeah,
Mm.
I tell myself, has someone done it before? Yes, I can do it. Has someone not done it before? If it's a yes, that is even a bigger push for me to go do it. Now, and with I had lots of support from um, my colleagues at Ava Labs. I started talking to people in the industry, trying to figure things out, trying to understand all these things. And is it staking, yield farming? I'm not going to belabor with the technical terms, but there's a lot there. And I started talking to the FASB, the industry bodies. There's a lot. There's a lot. There is a paper we put out last year that we launched in Toronto that talks about accounting for digital assets across different jurisdictions and why we need uniformity and consistency in measuring and all of those things. It's all about, again, me being open, naturally wanting to learn more, not
Mm.
wanting to say no to things that maybe most people would naturally say, no, I don't want that. Okay, I want to learn. I'm curious. I want to be able to demonstrate, to use my knowledge, to use the
Mm.
I have, to be able to talk to people, sit with them, and navigate ambiguity and talk about the complex things that's resolved for clarity, and just help shape. And this has seen me, working closely with not. This has seen me not just being somebody that applies rules, like you said, working with shaping policy. I don't just apply the rules anymore. I now work with the people, the bodies, or the focus groups that actually are shaping and setting the rules or the policy, and that's a huge step. So it's you can rule out intentionality from all of that. You can't rule out the can-do attitude. You can't rule out wanting to know more, wanting to collaborate, wanting to network. So a lot of things come together generally when you look
Yeah.
at my journey, especially in Web3.
Thank you so much. Conversation that really struck me was how all your experiences came together, your banking experience, your Big Four experience, not just as an auditor, but also as a technical guy. I've thought that 10 years or more down the line, right, that would shape up to be what you've become now. So that really highlights the fact that whatever it is that we're doing, it all
Mm.
comes together. Like you cannot look back. There's that,
Yeah.
is it Steve Jobs that said it? You can't connect the dots looking back. You can only connect them when you look forward,
Forward.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, so you've told us some of the things that, some moments that were the key turning points in your career, wanting to, I think one of them was wanting to start out to have work experience before going for your master's, because your
Mm.
story could have been very different if you decided to go for master's.
Yeah.
Maybe you've been in one university by now,
Yeah, maybe I
you know.
become a doctor, a PhD or something.
You understand?
Yeah.
So what would you say were some of the other key turning points? If you look back at your
Hmm.
career and you think about all the moments that really shaped you to become who you are today, what would you say some of those moments were?
I think some of them were things I intentionally drew on my own, and a lot of them were actually outside my control. A lot of them, you know. So let's look at the journey so far. I think, like I said, banking gave me the introduction to financial systems, right? Audit gave me the rigor, and just to know how to deal with good questions, how to not crack under pressure. Consulting gave me the range. Okay, yeah, technical accounting and policy, both DPP, EY, and Meta gave me the perspectives on how to be commercially sound. And the work I do currently is more about navigating ambiguity and all of that. And all of let's say everything they all together. And the turning points, if you look at all of this, they've not, as I moved from one to another, they've not been 100% within my control. I didn't choose to go to technical desk, for example. Yeah, I
Mm,
didn't. Yeah. It was Willem, who just called me one day to say, hey, do you want to go there and support them for just support them through the busy season, maybe like January to March
wow.
or April. Yeah. And like I said, it turned out to be me spending 3 years there until I moved from KPMG Nigeria to KPMG Ireland. So, I think it also comes down to people recognizing the value you bring, what you can do. And this is why it is very important to shine light and for people to see, get visibility. You talk about visibility a lot. Yeah, visibility is very important. These are people that saw what I could do. They saw the potentials in me. I think at that point, I probably didn't even. I saw it as a setup, to be honest. Because they're like, me, yes, no. I saw it as a setup. But yeah, it turned out great. Okay, because it's set foundation for nearly everything I've done in the past couple of years. So do what you have to do, and let the people that matter also see what you're doing, and they would also just guide you, whether intentional or unintentionally, towards the things that next. So I do my part. Those that are my mentors and my leaders in the workplace, those that I look up to, they do their part in also telling me, hey, do you think you can do this? Do you think this is what is next for you? Another thing, I didn't ask to be seconded to KPMG in Ireland. Yeah, at the time I was as a manager, and the program was for senior managers. Yeah, yeah, I think they needed put 4 people on the program, senior managers on the track to partnership, and they were only able to kind of really come up with 3 willing candidates at the time, but they didn't want to waste the first slot, the fourth slot. So I was asked, yeah, say,
Wow.
hey, yeah, do you to go on this? And again, I wouldn't know. It's an opportunity. It's something new. It's an opportunity for me to try something new. So I didn't say no. Now, of course, came to Ireland, and a new whole world opened up for me. Uh,
Mm,
now I work. Now I've also moved on from Ireland, and I work in a company that's based in the United States, remote for the most part. So again, the opportunity to work in Meta came up. I didn't say no to that. The opportunity to work at Ava Labs came up. I didn't say no to that. There are a lot of opportunities I've said no to. I'm actually talking about the ones that we obviously know shaped my career. I've built my career by not avoiding complexity. Okay. By actually also shooting my work shine, by intentionally building relationships, by earning that trusted advisor. When I got the PP, I think one of the first things I learned was that people need to trust your work. People are going to come with you with the most complex things they experience. Audit is hard enough. Okay.
Yes.
Accounting is hard enough. But these people who are stars on their own are going to come to you with their most significant problems because they expect you to find a solution for them. There's no right answer. It is what is most adaptable in the
Yeah.
circumstance, not outside the confines of accounting. So you need to be able to exercise judgment. Where you're not sure, ask. When you think you're not sure, scream, ask for help, and things like that. So I don't avoid complexity, and I don't think I'm that guy that avoids complexity. Although I know when to go full steam, on the kind of complexities I want. I want to backtrack. I'm not just an accountant or a finance professional. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I have my
Mm.
own life as well. So I kind of to manage the load or the burden on me. So I built it, by learning to navigate complexities and learning to navigate the the methods and actually just working with people, knowing that I need to build my relationships and keeping the network, and also being that guy that loves stuff done because this is very important. And you might have seen this popular video by Barack Obama where it was talking about who are the people he loves to work with, and it is just that guy who loves to get stuff done. Have to be that kind of guy, someone that loves to collaborate with people. So when you then hand yourself, like I said, people will come to you with their problems, you need to solve it for them. If you give them a wrong conclusion today, a wrong answer tomorrow, they're not
They
going to
won't come
trust you
to you
anymore.
tomorrow.
So you need to be that trusted advisor. And it was very then hugely important to me to become a trusted advisor. So, I wrote sleeves and started doing everything. I remember Yako, that I had to read every page of Insight. Of course, it was skills, but then I took it literally, but I only did that for maybe a day or two. Like, this is not possible. And then I went back to, I was just kidding. So, being that trusted advisor and made people see me as someone that they were willing to trust with their big projects, the complex stuff. And it was the same everywhere I went to, outside of the professional service environment in the industry, I always map out my stakeholders. You know, your stakeholders by power and interest, the high power, high interest, low power, low interest, medium. I always map, so I know the right attention to give to whom. Every stakeholder matters, but some
Yes.
are more important than others depending on the project. So I know the right attention to give to who at what time, especially because I don't have a typical day. So, different things happen at different times of day for me. So I know my stakeholders. I know I work with them. I follow their communication style. I don't have a blanket approach. This is just style,
Mm.
especially the leaders. This is just style. I'll adapt to
And
that.
that's
Some
how
people
I'll
don't want
adapt.
email. I won't send you emails. Some people want emails. I'll put a nice, some people want the emails. So whatever it is, I kind of adapt to the style of the people I'm working with, and make them see me as that person we trusted that can be uh, that person that will bring into the room when making difficult decisions. When deciding on what's next. And I
Mm.
think that's has really played a role in me being given, if I use the word, the right seat at the table and being afforded it to really be part of really great things.
Thank you so much. I am very much inspired, even though I know you personally and I followed your journey. But sometimes just hearing it again,
Hmm.
really brings to light. My next question is, what kind of skills would you say are critical to someone who wants to walk in your career path? I know you've mentioned some of them, but I would like
Yeah.
to hear, I've heard a lot of the soft skills, but I would like to hear more about the technical skills that are critical to succeed in your career path.
Yeah. I would say for starters, the strong accounting fundamentals. Yeah, if you're an accountant, you just have to know accounting. Of course, different people know different aspect of accounting. Sometimes I'm a generalist. I know some things better than some, but I think some things about nearly every aspect of accounting. But strong accounting fundamentals, generally, I think that's a technical skill that you need to have, and you need to know how to apply it. And then the soft skills of things, again, it might sound like I'm repeating myself, but all of these things come together and they work together. You need to be reliable.
I don't hear that a lot.
Yeah,
Credibility. Yeah,
yeah,
it matters.
it is, you can't, it's non-negotiable. You need to be reliable. You need to know how to communicate and collaborate. Just like I said, be that guy that people want to work with. Make it to work with you. I'm always working on this project or that project, and sometimes people might see me as a clog in the in the wheels because I ask tough questions. Okay, but it is always with the business, and the commercial objective in mind all the time. But be a pleasure to work with, and those are the kind of things I would say on this side. Know to collaborate, know to network, know how to build relationships in the workplace. I'm not asking to build relationship as friends, but relationship that will make people want to work with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that those are just so the strong accounting fundamentals on one side, and then on the soft skills side is the things that I've be that be the person that's go to that person where your managers leadership, everyone will believe in you and your ability to fix a problem, to get things done, and to build a collaborative work environment. There are many other things, but these are the things that I put
Yeah.
first. It's my job to know how to do it. And that is the accounting
That's
fundamental.
baseline.
First, yeah, the soft skills side of things.
Thank you. So someone listening to you might think you've had a very smooth journey. Like this guy from KPMG to EY, they even sent
Yeah.
him to Ireland. Now he's working with a US company.
Hmm.
But I know that your career has had some setbacks. You've had some challenges. Walk us through some of
Sure.
those challenges that you faced and
Right.
how you overcame them.
Right. Yeah. I think the first one, having to constantly navigate change. And this is my technical experience actually puts me in that circumstance. And even sometimes when I try to say I don't want to go the line of maybe technical accounting of this role of building financial integrity and governance and risk and all of that, it just naturally finds me. And this is one of the reasons why I've also then, you know, um, like I said, just expanding my tentacles. So I don't just see it as technical accounting. I see that financial integrity, governance, risk mitigation, um, oversight. A lot of times I'm working as finance business partner, but all of this generally means you are constantly navigating complexity. You're constantly in that space. Things are not always clear. No, but it's not for me. I enjoy it. It's very important to love what you do, so I enjoy it. But it takes a lot of time. Not some people are just comfortable with I want to do this and I don't mind doing this for the next 5 years or for the next 3 years or until thy kingdom come. You know, I'm I find repetition boring. So
Mm,
having to constantly navigate change. And this is not just about the work, you navigate, move from one industry to another. You've seen what the banking to this, to that, or navigate change in geographies. Okay, Nigeria, typical West Africa, Ireland, United States, and all of that, and even business models.
yeah.
All of those things require you to sit down, recalibrate, and identify, the work will go wrongs, the key business risks and matters like that. Of course, you're also working with new people. You need to understand them, understand their work style. So this has always been a challenge for me, I must say one of the biggest challenges, and I think that's one of the reasons I'm putting it first. One of the biggest challenges in my career, navigating industries, business models, geographies, and even the literature. At one point, you're doing IFRS, another point, you're doing Canada Gap, another point,
Mm,
you're dealing with Singaporean Gap, another time it's US Gap. So it comes, but again, I just have the mind of someone who is willing to learn, who is agile, who's willing to adapt. So that's fine. Another thing that I would say is, stepping into new terrains. Okay, yeah, it could be a huge challenge sometimes. Now, this is different to navigating change when it comes to business models, geography, and all of that. So stepping into new terrains could be a bit of a challenge sometimes. And I think personally, then the one I find quite challenging is, this thing about people or colleagues or fellow professionals underestimating you, or maybe an estimating is not, but constantly prove yourself. I don't like to prove myself. Okay. Yeah. I always say there's nothing to prove. I don't think my progress, and even though I would love to even be more progressive than this, I don't think my progress or the things I've accomplished by chance. Okay. I know the
Yeah.
drug effect is real, imposter syndrome is real. And but I always say that there's really nothing to prove. I just want to focus on building impact and making impact and all of that. When you go into somewhere new and given the kind of roles I find myself in, there is an immediate need. You know,
Yes.
yeah, I remember my current job. I started the job, first meeting with my manager, like, hey, welcome. Yeah. So, these are the things we have to do. I like, excuse me, it's like, yeah, there's a reason we brought you on board. These are the things, I like, we are barely 1 minute into this call, and it's already B. So there's that's having to prove your worth, having to show that you can do it comes with a lot of pressure. Okay, but again, I think my before grounding has really shaped me in not in knowing how to crack under pressure. But we are humans, sometimes it gets to you, sometimes it does not. So those are the kind of things I really say key challenges.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I still have like two or three questions, but we'll see how we
Fire
can
away,
just,
I
yeah,
have
because I
the
know you
time.
have you have a hard stop. So next 5 to 10 years, what do you think this path will look like? I'm really interested in one path because it's not a usual path. So where
Hmm.
do you think it will be in the next 5 to 10 years?
Good question. I don't think because again, I think my path has always been shaped by a part by the people who see the value and the opportunities and the things I can do. So I just tell myself really, it's going to continue to knock on the doors, continue to do great work, continue to build value, continue. I actually have a business of my own that I run on the side, and the whole ambitions, provide strategic accounting advisory services to Web3 companies.
Mm,
It is yeah, there's a depth of knowledge and expertise in the space. So I've seen an opportunity there, and I'm hoping I'm able to scale that in the next couple of years. But generally, I see Web3 accounting going from where we are. Like I said, we come from where we were all flying blind to where we have some guidance. And we've seen the SEC, the FASB, and the SEC has actually been quite active a lot in the Web3 space, providing, I think last week they came up with about clarifying what is a commodity, what is not. This has been a huge problem from the get-go when it comes to Web3.
yeah.
So there's the more we have, the more we're able to become grounded, and the less judgment we have when it comes to Web3. Now, of course, things will continue to evolve. Now we talk about liquid staking, and things will always change. DeFi is becoming more and more rigorous and more grounded as well. There are so many things in Web3 that are kind of emerging. Okay, and we are also talking about yield, getting yield on stablecoins, and a lot. We're looking to partnerships in that space. See, the way we look at traditional finance or traditional banking, and it continues to evolve. Okay. Yeah, I also see Web3 or digital finance altogether continue to rapidly evolve because this is new. This is a new frontier. This is a new technology. It's going to continue to evolve rapidly, and the more it evolves, the more we will need to figure out the accounting and the reporting and the compliance needs and all of that. So I expect I don't get easier, but I expect how we navigate it to get better, with regulatory clarity and guidance from the relevant accounting bodies. We will be able to do it better. But I expect it's gonna become massive, a lot massive. Look at the progress we've had in 5 or 6 of Web3. Web3 has been around longer, right? But in the last 5 to 6 years, the progress is massive. And the last 1 year actually has been exponential. So I expect it to slow down. I expect it to actually grow bigger and bigger, more and more. And it's just going to continue to grow.
Yeah, I think there'll be more information. I mean, just as
Yeah,
how you can pick up an IFRS booklet today and you can read up on IFRS 2, you can read up on IAS 16. I
yeah,
think that we'll start to see a lot more, way more that, because I think it's a field that I feel like it's not as explored. Just like you said, there's still a dearth of information and
yeah,
massive
100%. Yeah.
opportunities,
And another thing
especially
I
even
should add,
as
which is, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you short. You still talking?
yeah, I was saying that especially as
Yeah.
countries start to adopt these
Mm,
things, yeah, we'll start to
yeah,
see a lot more regulation and information policy shaping
policy shaping. Yeah.
around
We can't also rule out AI.
AI. AI was going to be part of my question. So now that you've
Yeah.
gotten there, I
Okay.
think you should wait. How do you think
Okay.
AI is going to shape this career path?
Massive in a massive way. Okay. The AI is really okay in the course of my work. I think it's
Wow.
the most important tool when it comes to my career right now. Yeah. And it has helped me in the course of work than any other thing, any I've
Oh.
ever used to work. Of course, I need the computer to do my work, but when it comes to tools, I see AI as a tool. Okay, it's incredible. I know you're big on AI yourself, and you related a lot that I'm saying here. There's a constant fear or threat amongst professionals, that AI is coming for a job. That is right. I think it's the right kind of fear to have. But I don't think it's coming for everyone's job. Now you could put the artisans aside, the jobs that you have to do with your hands, plumbing, electricals, and all of that. I- it's a for AI taking over those kind of jobs. But those of us that work with computers day in, day out, we are one but
Hmm.
I don't see AI really. The future is unknown at this point, highly uncertain because even the advent of is scary. Yeah, I say this that even if AI stops today, okay, what we've been able to achieve with AI in the last 2 to 3 years is enough.
Yeah.
Even if it stops today and you say, okay, no more models, no more this, no more that for the next 5 years, what we've seen in the last couple of years is enough. So, I do believe that we all have to embrace it. We all have to learn how to use it. And it's the more models now that is actually making it easier to understand and deploy these things. And
Yes.
it also in terms of scope, what I was AI for 2 years ago, last year, or even at the beginning of 2026, are not the same limitations I have today. So I believe we all have to embrace it. And AI will come for a lot of jobs. You're already seeing the impact on layoffs everywhere. But the accountant and financial professionals that embrace AI will be at less risk. I'm not saying not be at risk at all, but you'll be at less risk. Someone has to govern this AI, right? When you deploy AI as agents or your co-work or whatever it is you call them,
Hmm.
I have my AI as my executive assistant. They help me run on the low. You have to govern them, otherwise they're going to go rogue. So we still need the human oversight and intervention. So not everyone is at risk, but some will be at risk more than others.
I'm so glad you said that, because there's a level of judgment that AI cannot execute.
Yeah, for
AI
sure.
does not have context. AI does not know what's happening in Nigeria today. It can tell you that, oh, the fundamentals are great, the
Mm,
macros are great, but only me sitting in Nigeria can really explain it
yeah,
and explain the kind of impact, real impact, not textbook impact, because
yeah,
AI is also sourcing its data from somewhere, right? So it
yeah.
still needs my judgment to be able to deliver in the way that I want it to. So really thank you for sharing that. As we wrap up, because I know that you have to go now. What would you give? What is to an aspiring accountant if you look at your own career journey, the kind of
Mm.
advice that you did not get when you were starting out?
I would say do not box yourself in too early. Okay, yeah, it's an open world. There's so many things you can do. as an accountant. I say accounting is not narrow, it's not linear. You can be as an accountant. So do not box yourself in too early and just say, oh, this is it, this is all I'm going to do. You can have a niche, but there are opportunities to do many other things. And be curious for the right reasons. It is very, very important. Be curious for the right reasons. And thankfully, okay, because you said maybe the advice I didn't get at the start of my career. This is thankfully I had mentors, right from my trainee days. I was always looking for to these mentors, the right guide. Right up to now, everywhere I've worked, I have mentors. So I don't, you need the people who guide you to the next step and the next step. So don't bust yourself in too early. Be curious, of course. Build the network. Some say your network is a network. Relationships are very, very important. You have to, at every level, different skill sets are required at different levels. At every level, make sure you are building network for the level, for the next level. And just like I said, just be a pleasure to work with. Let people find it easy to work with you. It is be pleasant. That is the very important things. I'll see if I can like
People
one.
always say be likable. And
Yeah,
I feel like it's such an underrated advice.
yeah,
Because if you are likable and you're a pleasure to work with, opportunities that you don't even know exist will come your way
will come.
just
Yeah,
because
for sure.
people want to have you around. I feel like it's a really big cheat code that a lot of people don't talk about when they talk about their career journey, the successes
Mm,
they've achieved in life. It's
yeah,
really about how people perceive you. And in this part of the world, not even in this part of the world, perception is reality.
yeah.
What people think of you is the way they
That's
relate
what it
with
is.
you. It
Yeah,
affects the way they relate with you, the kind
yeah,
of thing they share with you. So I feel like a lot of people don't say it, but it's really underrated advice.
yeah.
So
And
thank you for
one
sharing
last
that.
thing is do not be afraid of reinvention,
Hmm.
because nothing is constant. And I always say this: and comfort do not coexist. Okay, when it comes to career, they don't coexist. So you have to self along the way, just constantly reinventing. Yeah, and be willing to embrace change all the time.
Thank you so much, Afeez. I've had such an amazing time having this conversation with you, learning more in detail about your journey and your journey of reinvention. Because when we talk about reinvention, you actually fit the bill, you fit the picture. You've allowed yourself to be open enough to try new things.
Mm,
I really liked what you said about saying yes to opportunities because sometimes out of fear, doubt, what will happen, fear of the unknown, we keep ourselves boxed in one corner when we could really just be out there exploring and trying out new things. And the funny thing is that you never know where all these things you're trying can lead you to. You didn't want to go to technical desk, but look at how that became a solid foundation for the rest
yeah,
of your career. And even now that you're in technical accounting and Web3, the Web3 is still evolving. Nobody knows where it's going to get to. So thank you
yeah.
so much for sharing your journey with us. I'm sure that as people watch this episode, they will try to reach out to you via your LinkedIn bio, which will be in the description. But thank you
Mm.
so much for joining me today. And I hope you have an amazing day.
Thank you, Rams, for having me on the show, on the podcast.
Thank you for
And
coming.
yeah, enjoy the rest of the day too.
Take
Talk to you
care.
again.
Bye.